Continuing, I was basically talking about me living alone and how it is not very practical considering, my mental health struggles and how, things turn out. Right now, I'm in a really good combo of medications, and it's been a few weeks that I've been like very stable. So, like if I keep up like this, we might consider in the future, just being myself. And as I said, like I totally understand, that it is in my best interest for me to just have people supervising me from like a distance. I think supervising might be a strong word. Just people, just, keeping an eye on me to make sure that like I'm okay and that I'm not cycling. Because as I said, right now, the past few weeks, I've been doing pretty well mentally. I'm like back to being an active person, a productive person, and I mean of course like it is a transition. Like there's still like a bit of a journey for me to for me to get to the place I have once been. But it is a start, and it's a very strong start. So far so good. But historically, there's been various moments where I was doing really well, and then suddenly, like I cycled, and then things turned out pretty bad. Like it's still like not ideal for me to be, left alone. And I understand that, even if sometimes it feels like it is getting in the way of my, freedom, of my liberties. But as I said, it is in my best interest. And right now, I am in a point where I want to keep on living. I want to keep on going. I started to make plans for the future. I'm starting to map out like the possibilities, and engage more with the things that are happening, because that is something that has always happened, because things are always happening around me, around everybody. Like things don't stop. Life doesn't stop. Like you may take a step back so you can focus on yourself, but things are going to kind of like pass you by, and you have to be okay with that. That was a bit of a journey that I had, because I didn't want things to pass me by. I'm thinking about like information, opportunities, because I think when I first started, I tried to convince myself that I was not missing on anything, missing out on anything. But that's not true. Like you're always missing out on something. Like you're choosing something is basically eliminating a different choice. So like you're always missing something. There's only one of you, so you can extend yourself to the point that you're kind of like doing everything, which is what I wanted to do when I was younger. I finally ended up accepting at a certain point that like that is not how things work, and my life has been better ever since, because I was used to be very frustrated about the limitations of being a person, an individual, and not like a collective, But what I'm trying to say is that it is the best choice for me, for my health, my mental health, for me to be here. And it also is the best choice financially, because as I'm here, I'm saving money for, something else in the future. Like this is the best course of action. And of course, there are certain limitations that I have by being here, but you have to think about doing a cost benefit analysis. Like it's definitely better for me to be here. Although, like as I said, it's interesting because like I haven't really been putting too much thought into it. Particularly, I think because of this, because if I start putting thought into things, I could start getting frustrated. So I wasn't even thinking about any of that. I only ever thought about it when people brought it up. Sometimes doctors, and the therapists, like they bring up, the fact that I'm constrained here to a certain degree, and it is what it is. So like I didn't think too much about it, but like right now, I think because I'm back to being okay, it is coming back, and I am considering options. But yeah, but anyways, back to what I was talking about before, which is the feeling that I'm being left behind. I do think that I am moving, because sometimes, because that's the thing, life, it moves at a pace, right? So sometimes you can move faster than the pace of life, and that can be frustrating, because then things are just not happening. Or you can move at a slower pace, and then it's also bad because you get kind of like overwhelmed, because there's too many things happening and you're not really on top of your situation. And where do I find myself in this? It depends. Like back when I was managing a couple a month or so ago, I felt like life was too slow, that things were not happening fast enough. And then I guess when I'm depressed, I can feel the very opposite, that like things are happening too fast, and that I'm not like in control of anything, and that I'm kind of like by losing control, I'm kind of like losing myself a little bit. But it is life. It's not like these feelings are not exclusive to me. This is everybody. So right now that I am stable, where am I? I find that like my life, it is happening at might be happening at like a slightly slower pace than everything else. But the slightly slower pace, it means that like I am basically on top of everything. Maybe it could be there's something more things could happen, because also like I think the way that I perceive how my life is going is filtered. I'm filtering some things out. I'm leaving some things out of the equation, and that kind of like also allows me to, maybe I'm moving at exactly the right pace. It's just that I'm just, as I said, I'm keeping some things out, and as a consequence I can be on top of my game. And it's pretty much what I feel like right now. Like next week, this week, no, today's Sunday, so the first day of the week. So this week, my classes, they are starting again for this semester, and I am like I'm both excited and not terrified, but I'm a little worried, because like am I going to be able to keep up, because I ended up actually getting more this semester than I got last semester. But also it's just, it is what it is. Like whatever happens basically. I'm not trying to be fatalistic, but like there's only so much I can do regarding like everything and anything. Like I'm gonna do my best what I can, but there is a chance that at some point in the semester I'm gonna cycle, and then I will no longer be able to kind of like keep up as I will at the very beginning of my classes. Also, like there's the matter of like how much am I going to engage with that, as something I mentioned in the previous video, because like life kind of like, oh, I think I mentioned in this video, like life is kind of happening all the time, and like what changes is how you're engaging with things. So sometimes when I'm depressed, what happens is that like I'm not engaging with anything. Things are kind of like happening around me, and I'm kind of like detached from them. There's nothing that is keeping me, that's keeping me, I'm not going, things are going past me, and I'm just still kind of like here, or moving at a very slow pace. And like that is always the risk of like that happening. Like I usually, whenever I have a good moment, I tend to be very pessimistic about like it's changing. It's just, I don't want to be a pessimist, but it's kind of hard for me to engage with that situation in a way that I don't think about what has happened in the past, and how things have not worked out in the end, and how like I had a good moment, and then I had a bad moment, and the bad moment, they usually last longer than the good moments. But right now, for some reason, I'm kind of confident that I'm going to keep on being better. It doesn't feel like this is a fluke. It feels like I'm building something here. It can be wrong. For example, when we traveled a few months ago, I had this kind of like certainty at the end of the trip that I wanted to focus on the future, and I thought that like I was getting somewhere, and then in the end I ended up going back a few steps after that. And I think it was like as soon as I came back, things changed. But right now, like I am here, I'm not in a different circumstance, like this is pretty much what my life usually is like. So I think because of this, I'm confident that like this is something, but naturally, like if there now should not be something, should be kind of like nothing, I will still be happy and contented with the time, the good moment I had, because particularly because a lot of the things that I do when I'm like doing well, like they can be undone. So like like even if I for these good moments followed by like a lot of bad moments, the things that I did, they're kind of like they have accumulated, like I'm not gonna lose them. So for example, my novel, the progress I made is going to keep going. It's not going to be, I'm not going to lose that progress. I'm going to lose the potential progress I have in the future, but not what has already happened. And I think this is something that is very important, very helpful for me to feel like I'm not like losing grasp of them, kind of like losing my grasp on things, because like if you have something concrete to show for the good times, it means that they really happened. It was not just a little momentary thing. I mean, it was a little momentary thing, but like you moved forward in during like that period of time. You're not stuck, which sometimes it feels depending on how I'm doing, because sometimes mania is kind of like that. I do a lot of things, but none of them like have permanent effects or consequences. I mean, consequences they have, but like they don't have any permanent effects. So it feels like nothing has happened at all. Yeah, but that is going back to the whole me feeling like the time is passing me by. As I said, it's not a new feeling. Okay, I'm back. it's not a new feeling. It's not something that like it isn't heard of for me, but it does feel weird in this for me to be having this really good mental health moment and still feeling that way. It's not. I feel like it doesn't really match well, but it still happens. Honestly, just by talking about this, like I'm feeling much better actually. It has had an effect on my psyche. I no longer feel like I'm like losing my grasp on things. It feels just like things are happening at exactly the pace they're supposed to happen, and that I am like making as much progress as I possibly can. And honestly, like sometimes you just have to wait. That is like the worst. I hate waiting. Like it just doesn't sit well with me. I have to be doing something. So usually I find things to do when I'm waiting. And right now, in fact, I'm waiting because I'm gonna go out with my brother. But he asked us, we're going to wait at 11:30, but he asked us to go 12 p.m. So I'm gonna have to wait for like an extra half hour. And as I said, like I have to find something to do. I have two things that I can possibly do. I can play some games, the New York Times games. Like there's still a couple that I haven't finished today, and I can make a necklace for a friend of mine. Next time we're going there visiting her, the same friend that I visited this Friday. I'm going to give her and her mother a necklace. So I have to just come up with what it is going to be. And I think that I'm already starting to have some ideas. So yeah, so I don't like waiting, but sometimes I had to wait because for example I'm gonna start this semester, like this is going to be my last semester with this course, this major I'm majoring in. But I wish I could already start my the next one, the new major, but that's going to be like just next semester, and like that is a wait that I'm going to have to wait. I mean, I have to even take the exam yet. It's going to be in November around my birthday, and I'm thinking that maybe depending on how things go next year, I might be taking this exam every year so that I can try a new thing. So far so good. So far, like I am allowed to do this. My life has been sane, and also like talking about me being left behind. I've been thinking about my payday, and not just about the day that the pay is going to come in, but like what it is. And I mean, I have my stuff that I do to complement my income, but I want more. And I'm thinking about how can I like get the main one to be more, and I don't know how yet. Like I'm going to be thinking about this, and I'm going to figure something out, because ultimately like I feel like I always figure something out, even if like I'm a little hopeless for like a little moment, a little while, and then figuring things out. Eventually I come up with solutions. At least I can count on myself for being that. This is something that I like about myself, like just being a little resourceful when necessary, and sometimes not even when it's necessary, but it's wanted, and I am. But yeah, so me feeling like I'm being passed by. I'm not feeling like that anymore, but I understand why I felt like that. It's not a new feeling that I have, because at different points in time I have felt it. But right now, like I have, so much has happened. I've done so much. I think the key for me to just kind of like counter these feelings is actually for me to write, because like completing a novel, it just brings a sense of accomplishment to you, and also it just kind of like it justifies like the first novel I ever wrote. I was 16 to 17, and like that is something I have to show for the year 2015. So I have this to show like, okay, this was happening, so I wasn't really being passed by, because I was doing the first, in 2015 I did so many things when I was in school, and when I was in high school. Like I just was invested in so many different activities, so many different extracurriculars. So like I have a lot to show for that time. It's probably why I don't feel like I wasted. When I was younger, when I was like 17, I actually felt very disappointed with myself, because I felt like I wasn't doing enough. But like right now, when I look back, I'm like I was doing so much. It was just my unrealistic expectations of myself and of my life. And then the second novel, like it took me many years, but once I had it, it's just something for me to show for that period of time. And the third one, I was trying to write like in 1 year, but right now it seems it's going to be more like 2 years. So it's something I'm going to show and be like, this is pretty much what I was doing this time. So I think that is the key, because it helps me with my anxiety in the present time, but also in the long run it's going to be something for me to show, and for me to be like, yeah, this is what was happening. Yeah, so basically, what I'm trying to say here is that these feelings, I think they will always come back one way or another. Every once in a while, I'm going to experience them. What I have to do is process them and, come out on the other side. And, like you're going to be stronger because I feel like every time you experience some certain emotions, you become a little bit more resilient to them. So, right now that I felt this and I processed it in my head, it's going to take a little bit more the next time for me to feel like I'm losing, I'm just wasting my time and, not getting any results. Which is not necessarily the same as, being left behind, but it is kind of like ultimately like the biggest fear that we have, right? That, like that you're wasting your time, and that is another emotion that I have throughout the years like dealt with, because when I look back there's certainly moments where I'm like, yes, I was wasting my time, but I don't look at those moments with like disregard or contempt, because at the time I didn't know I was doing as well as I could, and also like it's good to look back, because then you realize like for the future, for future reference, why you should and should, what you should avoid, what you shouldn't do, like that type of thing, because ultimately, like the past is like a lesson for future. I have a tattoo here, which like this one right here. It says basically is Latin for examine the past, the present, examine the future, and I really like it because ultimately, like you have to be conscientious of like all three states at every point in time for you to keep going. Like you have to mind the future for you to move on with your life. You have to mind the past, you have to mind the present. Everything is kind of like building up to something. But yeah, so basically what I'm trying to say is that I have moments that I look back where I feel like I wasted my time, but I don't look at them like with resentment and contempt. It's just it happened. It was what it was, and like right now, and because of those moments, I have been able to avoid more things in the future. So for example, me no longer having any social media, like that's a good example of like me looking at the past and just being like, I wasted too much time here, and also not just wasting time, but like it was really bad for my mental health and I don't want this anymore. So I had those experiences where I wasted my time, but as a consequence, I'm no longer having doing the things that will waste my time in the future. So here's like a quick example. Same thing with like a lot of like different emotions that I have felt. So even like this one of feeling like that I'm being left behind, like this is a good example for me. I don't want to feel like this in the future, and a good way. And then also like when you feel like this, you have to assess like, are you really being left behind, or is it just like a feeling that you're having because things are not working maybe as quickly as you want them to? And for me right now, I can confidently say that like, no, I'm working, things aren't working. It's just like the feeling, by comparing myself to some other, to some other individual, some other people who are at different points in time. So like I'm good, I don't have to feel this way, because if you realize that you are being left behind, then you might have to do something about how you conduct yourself and about your life, or maybe not. As I said, like for example, when I'm depressed, I've learned that the best thing I can do is like bask in my feelings and come out of the other side, because if I try to suppress them or ignore them, like that first of all doesn't work, and also like it just extends things. Like if you allow yourself to feel your feelings, feel like whatever is sparkling in you, you will process those things quicker, yeah, quicker. It will be better that way. But but also like even if like you're like you're being left behind, like there's a valid argument to be made that sometimes you need to take a little break, and then things are going to pass you by. But sometimes it is good, like you need things to pass you by, because keeping up with things can be really bad for you, and it can be very overwhelming, very can be leaving these very insurmountable feelings. So sometimes, there can be a positive in there. It's basically, you have to assess the situation. Like every situation is different. You have to, like look at yourself and look at the point you are in. That's also important, because sometimes, like, if you look at yourself in general, like you'd have like an average of things, you might not have like a very accurate picture of like where you are at that point in time. And like then you won't really be able to make the best out of your situation, and to meet your whatever needs you have, whatever desires you have, and all that. So yeah, I think that's it what I wanted to say. So anyways, bye.